Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hey, Rick.
Hey there. Good morning.
Good morning, Rick.
I love you, Vinny. Yeah,
you too, Rick.
it's all
hey,
good.
Rick, we haven't seen each other in a couple weeks, right?
I know. Yes, that's true. Yes. Pensacola? Yeah. Are you doing Pensacola?
I don't know. I might. I
don't know yet. There. They haven't said to me because the flights may be beyond their budget or something. You know, just flying now is starting to get kind of spendy.
Yeah, it is. Well, and you're kind of pretty far from where the
I'm not on Mars yet, but that's next. I've had it.
Yeah,
I've had it, man. This is crazy here. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. The U.S. is literally falling apart at the seams.
Hmm? Oh, I can't debate that. I totally agree with that. Everywhere I look, there are problems.
In everything I see, in every person I meet, in every event that I participate, I watch the slow dissolving of American values. It's really a shame. Everything has been infiltrated and spin. Mm-hmm. Out here, I don't even know. The only people that I deal with now are people I've known more than 10 years.
Rick, have you seen the series Madam Secretary on Netflix?
I saw that on Netflix, or no, it was in a bar in an airport, and I had a 3-hour layover coming back from Kansas City, and I saw my first, it was at a bar, and so I was there to watch it. I watched it. Yeah. So no, I haven't seen it other than one show.
Well, here's what it portrays. It portrays the life of Madam Secretary, and she's caught in all kinds of scenarios where she has to spin and lie or misrepresent or mislead or conjure up some alleged information. It's horrible. And it's just an insight as to what our government does to us. They just don't tell the truth about anything. Like, for example, one thing that I'm sure a lot of us would like to know is what information does the government have about UFOs, unidentified flying objects, and aliens? What does the government have that they could share with us? They don't share anything with us. They've shared nothing with us. And William Jefferson Blythe Clinton was very interested in UFOs, and they wouldn't tell him because his clearance wasn't high enough. The point I'm trying to make is what's so tough about saying, you know what, here's what we found out, here's what we know, here's some of the pictures, and you know what, you don't have to be afraid. These guys aren't trying to kill us. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with telling us the truth about the economy? What's wrong with saying, if our family were in financial distress, I would call a meeting with our family, and I'd say, I just want to lay this out for you. Here's where we were. Here's where we are. Here's where I see us going. Let's talk about it, and what can we do about it? So if we were in financial distress, well, maybe turn our lights off, maybe cancel some subscriptions, maybe magazines, we throw them overboard because we're not doing that anymore. Maybe, we would tighten our belt in lots of different ways. That's not what's happening. We're not being told the truth about the current situation, the reality right now. And I don't understand why. I really don't understand why. Do you?
Yeah, it's all about money and the control of our spending it. And if religion, which is the biggest sham, not people's personal spiritual beliefs, and they're attempting to distinguish between morals and ethics, but the control of the population and the way it's going to believe. That's why they have the elders stand around the doors, and because it's a control thing. And it has, you can look at how they did it in Mexico and the way that the religious fervor of their different holidays include creepy things. I will have nothing to do with it. I used to go to church because of fellowship and playing baseball and being with people that had similar values as me and having fun with them. We called them picnics and baseball games, and it was fun. It wasn't competitive as much as it was just being with other people with similar values. That has all changed. And when I say it's all changed, it's not as I remembered going to church and the way the church is. Now, today, most of it's around charismatics and the splintering of belief systems into ideologies of here and there, and everybody else is damned. I can't buy into that. I have met holy men, Buddhists, whatever, that are extremely like a Jane, sweeping ants in front of them out of the way so that they don't take the life of an insect. I have to tell you that the whole thing is nuts. And to have wars, mostly, that's what it was about in the 14th century, and the Church of Rome. And the way today, what they're doing with the UN is mostly run by a group of businessmen trying to make it a one-world government. And there are holdouts in Iran, Iraq, Syria, Russia, China that will not abide by that kind of nonsense. And that's what wars are about, and I am embarrassed to be in the middle of it. I'm old enough now, I do not have to participate. When I was younger, I went to graduate school rather than go to Vietnam as a 2S deferred, and they had me making weapons. And once I discovered what I was doing, I walked away and went into agriculture. Now, I don't buy into any of this, and it's all about money, which is now about to change. And when I say that, I'm watching I'm in the middle of something with White Dragon Society and the Rothschilds. That's the way to put it. The money, dollar bill, and the yuan. And there is a war going on where these top-end businessmen are going to try to somehow or another crush Syria so that they abide and kneel to the biggest bully in the world, the United States of America. It's an embarrassment to be even part of something like this. And it's not real. And while they try to stoke it up with beheading and ISIS and fanaticism, it's not real. I noticed a big banner across town today saying, there's a big church meeting this weekend called Islam in Jesus' Eyes. And they're going to talk about how Islam would be related to what Jesus thinks. Now, why not let Jesus himself say something? What is this about? And the interpretation of trying to interpret the Quran or Confucius or Buddha or other wise men through history that have had revelations of their own that are every bit as consistent as Jesus. And Jesus was an Essene. That's where all that treating others like you would have yourself be treated. That's where it came from. It's India. And why would they? And I don't understand any of this. I personally have now discovered that everybody is different. And that is the quality of what makes us human, is that each of us has our own individual church inside. And the distinguishing of one to another, unless you're in a cult, and that's what it's all turning out to be now. I'm finding that all these different sustainable life cults are mostly charismatic cults based on ideologies that differ from the rest of the world. And what they do is they lock down. And while there are aberrants like the Branch Davidian and the concepts of polygamy and whatever, how dare these people make judgment on another? And, I'm going to probably get in trouble because of my own personal beliefs, but I believe that a woman's body belongs to her. And if she got pregnant from rape, and there's many that have, and that choose not to want to have that child, what is wrong with that? It's her body. How can we, in the land of the free, religious discussion and freedom, that's what America was about, it's no longer true. And they'll ostracize you. They'll ostracize me because I studied the occult. Occult means occluded or hidden, just like other things are. And yet, I would be seen as an evil person because I found that interesting to study. The reason I found it interesting is because nobody else was interested in it, and I wondered why. That's my rant for this morning. I got that off my chest. Well, I actually, what my girlfriend and I do now is we go to every Sunday, we try to take in a different church in town here. There's a lot of them. And to determine if there's a fellowship that I might be able to go to. It doesn't matter that I don't believe the same way they do. I'm looking for open-minded people, and I'm having some difficulty doing it. Seventh-day Adventists are pretty cool. Some Mormons are pretty cool. I don't know.
I lost a friend, a dear friend, because we were at the house here. Dr. Shealy was here, and Dr. Shealy mentioned past life regression. And I said, well, I don't know anything about that. I'd like to hear more about that. And that terminated a friendship. I didn't do it. My friend terminated it, and we haven't hardly talked since. We'll be right back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Class, if you'd like to go to his website, docram.com, docram.com. Rick, when I went to freshman orientation back in the 1970s at the university, I was in this very large, like a theater almost. And the person on stage said to all the young freshmen, look to the person at your left. Now look to the person at your right. One of you will be here 4 years from now. Only one of you will survive and to graduate. And last night, I was watching a movie on Netflix with my mom and Mrs. Finelli. And it was called 13th, 13th, 13th. And in this movie, it says, while 1 in 17 white males will go to jail or prison in their lifetime, the odds for black men is 1 in 3. So look to your left, look to your right. One of the three of you, if you're black, will go to jail or prison in your lifetime. And it talked about the disproportionate percentage of black people and brown people who are in prison, and that prisons are for profit, and that our alleged representatives have sold us out so that we could, what do you do about these black people? It seems to be a problem for these elite. And, not only were they kidnapped and stolen and brought here against their will, we made them slaves, and we used them to build the infrastructure, and we built our country on their backs. And then when they were freed in the 1860s, allegedly freed, the establishment found a new way to control them, and that was arrest them for small charges and give them long sentences. And what we found out was that blacks in the inner city would not go to trial. For some reason, they didn't go to trial. Maybe they didn't have enough money, or maybe they weren't aware that they could go to trial. So they would plea bargain, and many of them would plead guilty because they were told they would get, you get 30 years if you go to trial and we convict you, or I'll tell you what, we'll do 3 years, and just plead guilty to this charge, and you get 3 years. And so, what a great way, according to the elite, to have almost free labor. Arrest people on small charges or trumped-up charges, put them in prison, and then you've got slavery within the prison. And I was in Illinois, and I saw these huge, huge walls. You couldn't see over them I was in my truck, and it was the prison. And you look at the walls and you don't think anything about it because, it's behind the walls. You don't know about the torture and the rape and the beatings by the guards and the fellow prisoners. You don't know about that because you can't see it because it's not public information. It's all hidden. So I have a homework assignment for our class, and that is, if you have Netflix or if you have the opportunity to watch 13th, 13th, absolutely riveting. It is disgusting. It's not disgusting the way it was portrayed. It's disgusting what it shows. It shows you how evil people can be to other people, how they're willing to beat each other, how the guards with these nightclubs will handcuff someone and then shove them around, get them on the ground, jump on them. I'm talking about a prisoner will be beaten. It's horrible. And then they're put in cages. And some of these cages are about, if you imagine sitting down in a chair, and then you have a cage that is 6 inches wider than that chair on all sides, and you're put in that cage, front, back, 6 inches in the front, maybe a few inches more, maybe 8 inches in the front, the back, the sides. Imagine that. We don't put poultry in cages like that. It's an absolute outrage. And it says, from slave to criminal with one amendment. That's 13th. Class, I suggest you watch that and pay attention to it. And we need to fix this. And this may cause you to do what I do, never reelect anyone. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Rick, there's a post on the internet. It's at yahoo.com. Headline reads, millions of North Carolina chickens die in Hurricane Matthew floods. The reason I'm mentioning this, I'd like to get your take on this, and, the concentrated or factory farms. And so it says that flooding from Hurricane Matthew has killed up to 5 million poultry birds in North Carolina, most of them chickens. And that's a lot of birds, 5 million birds. So you have 5 million dead birds. And then it says there were some pits holding hog waste on farms, and that has been inundated with flood waters. And then if you think about these chicken farms, now, class, if you've ever seen them, they have like an area, a large area, as big as a house typically, where they put the dead birds. So they take all these dead birds that just die, in these factory farms, and they heap them up in a pile, and they just sit there until they do something with them. And they just, decay and smell. And then they take the chicken manure and they scoop that out with a front-end loader, and they put that in the pile. And so now you have all this decaying waste. So the floods come along, and they wash away these dying birds, plus the just recently dead birds, the 5 million. Plus you have the chicken manure, the hog manure, the other dead animals mixed in with the whatever's in the garage. I'm talking about people's garages, and they've got Roundup, and they've got motor oil, and they've got lawnmowers, and they've got the gasoline cans, and they've got all these other chemicals, and then they've got the drain cleaning chemicals. All of these insecticides, herbicides, petroleum chemicals, lye, chicken manure, hog manure, you put it all together, and it's going downstream where to the water supply, drinking water supply, where it's cleaned up, and then it goes to the ocean. Rick, what do you think about how reckless we are with how we are doing things today, like these factory farms, and the potential for disaster, like one we just had?
I don't even get half of what people are doing. In Florida, for example, there's nuclear waste that is washing along the coast, the East Coast, because of leaking nuclear reactors. And that alone has changed everything. The sinkhole situation, because of fracking and the rest of it, is, I think it's time for a lifestyle change. And I don't have the answers on, how other people are going to make that transition. I can only do it for myself and hopefully leave footprints in terms of what I've discovered and why I want to do it this way over that. Everybody's different. That's why we have all the different sustainable lifeboats that are cult-driven. Everybody's got a different idea of how they think the end of the earth is going to happen. It's really archetypal in that basically we are essentially creating our own apocalypse. Doesn't have to be like this. It could be seen as an opportunity for change, which is healthy. Change has always been the rule in everything. Everything changes. You know it's going to change. So that's the problem with being inside or outside the box. And we need to do both, because it is the integration of fear with faith. Faith is the opposite of fear. And basically, they're both illusion. They're not real any more than the future or the past is real. What's real is the moment and the way you integrate the two of those things. And so faith has its purpose just like fear does. And it's not to try to get rid of one of them to the exclusion of the other. It is the proper integration of that which is called change. And that's one of the reasons why I said in one of my previous books, articles, that the idea that voice of reason and voice of coyote are the same voice. They're necessary for the proper integration of fear with faith. I haven't said that as articulate as I just have, but think of it like a black hole and a white hole. And fear is the little mind killer. It will kill you. And faith is not any more real. Now that's a physicist saying it. Now it doesn't mean I believe that. I love and use faith like I use fear as a tool. It is not an absolute. And when I watch people close their eyes and raise their hands up high, what does that look like? But someone shutting off their mind.
As you were saying this, Rick, I was thinking about back in the early 1980s, I had a car. It was an Alfa Romeo Alfetta GT. And one of our instructors got in this car, and this was way before we started this broadcast, decades before we started the broadcast. But he's an instructor now. And he got in my car, this, I think it was a 1979 Alfa Romeo Alfetta GT. And he was in the passenger seat, and he was putting the seatbelt on. And he was struggling with the seatbelt, and he stopped dead in his tracks, and he looked at me, and he said, he was a mechanical engineer. He designed mechanical systems. He was brilliant. He looked at me, and he said, who approved this design of this seatbelt? Now, he didn't say, who engineered this? He said, who approved this design? And I thought that was a really brilliant statement, and it stuck with me all these years. And as we were talking about the nuclear reactors, who approved these designs? That they knew these would leak. Either that, or they were individually greedy and careless. What do you think, Rick? Were they just careless?
They also knew there was no way to actually get rid of nuclear waste. That's what Hanford was all about in the first place. I was there when Dixie Lee Ray was head of the Atomic Energy Commission and before she was a governor. And I was there to watch it. The whole idea was we will eventually evolve a technology to handle this. We're not going to worry about it now because we need it now. And they went off and needed it. And now here we have hell to pay. And I don't know how to do this, to turn off the switch on just the Madrid fault line. I mean, you guys are sitting on a time bomb.
Well, Rick, aren't we all sitting on time bombs? Anyone who lives downwind
most
from
of them on the West Coast, they're closed down now. And while they're all closed down, Hanford is still leaking into the Columbia River. And it's like serious. And nobody is actually talking about how bad the storage facilities are in Nevada and Oregon and Washington and other places, Michigan, where these containers are now in storage leaking. And we were supposed to have technology that addressed that years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing was, again, about money.
The Wigner effect causes
and
a
that's
rapid...
how you've got your United Nations and your 1% trying to tell us how else to live our lives. And why there's wars in Syria, because they won't buy into their one world order. I no longer support the United Nations. I have nothing to do with it. At one time, I thought it was a great idea when Nikita Khrushchev got up on stage and started banging his shoe as a gavel, trying to get everybody's attention in his anger. It's crazy.
And he said, we will bury you. He said, we will bury you.
And now, Edgar Casey is the one that said it will be the bear that saves democracy. Now, it isn't going to be Hillary Clinton.
There's the latest news about Hillary's campaign and people being not very pleasant toward Catholics, Latinos. It's really kind of it's disturbing. It's disturbing.
It's very disturbing, and when you realize that nothing we're being told in the media is real, how do you really know what's going on? How can you have a free will and make proper decisions for yourself when you don't have full disclosure in this area? I don't care about aliens for a moment. I'm talking about just anything.
I met with the meetup group many times, and one of the things that I brought, this was, over the 5+ years that we had the meetups. I no longer have a meetup. But I mentioned to the meetup group probably in the second half of those 5+ years that my plan was to teach how to decipher what's really true and what's happening, and cut out the lies and the misinformation and the disinformation that is being released in the media. Because I would say things like, you cannot prepare if you don't know what's happening. You cannot prepare if you don't know the truth, because you might be thinking everything is fine just before this major calamity strikes. Like either a grid down situation, a meltdown situation, a supply chain situation, a massive crisis of some kind, default, all kinds of things can happen. And I would say you've got to be able to ferret out the truth. And some of the meetup guys didn't really want to hear about that. They didn't want to hear from some of our, best and brightest. They wanted to know how to prepare on a scale that was really not large enough. And I would say things like all that information's on YouTube. If you want to know how to do that, if you want to plant a garden, it's on YouTube. So, Rick, it's a really frustrating task that we have because, number one, we're being lied to, and number two, people don't want to ferret out the truth. We'll be right back. Doc Ram's with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Hey, Rick, I went to the veterinarian's office recently, and I was buying some, and this may sound like it's made by the government to make it seem like I'm doing something illegal, but when you have animals and they need an antibiotic injection, or they need a supplement injection, you buy syringes, and you can buy them each, or you can buy them by the box. And so, farmers, we all have syringes, we all have antibiotics, we all have injectables. If our animals get sick, that's what you do when someone gets sick. You go to the doctor, and the doctor gives you an injection, right? Well, we have that for our animals. So I wanted to get something called triiodine, Triodine. And what happens is if an animal gets cut or scraped and is bleeding, and you want to prevent infection, there's this spray bottle, 16 ounces, and it has a trigger on it, like if you're going to spray a window compound to clean your windows. It's kind of like that. And so you can get, within maybe 18 inches of the wound, just spray it, and it works great. It's now restricted. The government wants to make sure that not anybody can buy this iodine. Can you imagine that? So what used to be a normal situation, a farmer would go in and say, okay, I'd like a bottle of iodine, 7% solution. Now it's you've got to have a really bona fide reason. And and the veterinarian has to know you. Why? Because they say it's possible that iodine and compounds containing iodine, like ionic bodies and iodoform and ethyl iodide and others, are reagents that are useful in the manufacture of methamphetamines. Have you heard about that, Rick?
No, I haven't. What I have noticed is that all my life I used mercurochrome and iodine to heal wounds that would otherwise get infected. And once they took that off the market because, quote, it contains mercury, which I didn't care about in terms of having a lesion open. Have you ever used mercurochrome? I have all my life,
of course,
as a way to stop things from getting infected, and now I don't even have that available anymore. As far as making methamphetamine, they're using now anhydrous ammonia, which is rather than methylamine and phenyl-2-propanol. The deal is that that's used as a refrigerant. And so it's crazy. I saw an article in the paper yesterday suggesting that it's time we take all illicit drugs and make them legal, because the crime is about them being illegal. And just FYI, it was Bill Clinton on his war of drugs that brought the cocaine in on that bridge in Arkansas. And here's a federal judge talking about it as the worst criminal in Arkansas history. And guess what? He's out campaigning for his wife. Scott David got kicked out of one of those things down in Florida. Here we are with criminals running for president. and, they're taking and regulating things for our health when, in fact, none of it's real. And worse, you ought to see what I posted this morning on Facebook regarding immunization. Thanks, Joey. Joey just sent me, no, that was J.C. Cole that sent me a couple of things on immunization and what they're doing now in Europe, trying to fake everything.
Rick, can you tell us more about that when we come back? And also, I'd like to read a report called Radiation, Your Radiation This Week, September 24 to October 8, 2016. By the way, RK's got gun shows coming up, 3 gun shows this weekend, October 15 and 16. Columbus, Georgia, Knoxville, Tennessee, Springfield, Missouri. And I'm going to do my best to make it to the one in Springfield, Missouri. That's Columbus, Georgia, Knoxville, Tennessee, Springfield, Missouri, October 15 and 16. RKshows.com. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. And we broadcast 2 hours daily, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time. John engineers the broadcast at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli, and we have a call-in number if you'd like to chat with us, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Doc Graham is with us. Hey, Rick, Bob Dylan, singer and songwriter, and one of the world's most widely known and influential.
Cool.
he won a Nobel Prize
I
in
know,
literature.
Man. Isn't it cool?
Yeah, I've been toying with playing pieces of his work on this broadcast for the last several weeks. I haven't done it because I thought, I just didn't do it. But anyway, his real name is not Bob Dylan. He's 75 years old. He was born May 24, 1941 in Duluth, Minnesota. And his real name is not Bob Dylan. It's Robert Allen Zimmerman, Zimmerman.
I'd be crazy like him if my name was that too,
Rick, he was right on the money way early with some of his songs and some of the things that he said. He talked about the government. He talked about the evils of it, the corruption, and he did it in a way that I don't know if everybody fully understood it, but he was right on the money with a lot.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons he never smiles. Nah, everybody's got to serve somebody. Yeah. Rick, that's the way it works, man. A crust is big brass bed.
Yeah. Hey, Rick, tell us about your latest works, your Encyclopedia of Agriculture. Can you tell us what's in it? I just finished.
Russell has just completed converting with OCR stuff I wrote before I had computers. And it was a massive effort because it's 9 volumes. Each one is several hundred pages times 9. And it is the Encyclopedia of Alternative Agriculture. 10 years of me researching how to grow, harvest, process, and market various alternative crops known mostly as non-storable commodities. In other words, there's limited markets like peppermint or spearmint. And, they've had, in some cases, just limited production. You don't store it each year. Like a spice, it gets harvested each year, and what's available is what the world gets to use. And this type of market is the richness of our diversity in agriculture, not the 5 or 6 basic groups like white bread, cheese, hamburger, and milk, which is the American diet. And it's at some point, it's 9 volumes, and I put it in ebook form so that they used to be, I think it was $25 for volume 1 and 2. Well, now it's down to $6 or $5.99 per volume, or If you buy it as a group, and we're putting that together today for Amazon, it'll be $45. And I could use the incomes. You want this information. You will never find this anywhere else. It's all in one spot on how to grow herbal coffee and be able to have an alternative when the grid collapses. Nobody's getting Ethiopia, and now you want your morning brew. What are you going to do? I don't think anybody's thought about that.
Yeah. Rick, are you saying how to grow like chicory?
Yeah, and dandelion. Maybe hit it with ribose stevia, sugar it up a little bit, and then some, licorice mint, and then some Madagascar vanilla bean. Imagine how that cups.
Rick, I'm so glad you did this. Last night, it was late, and I was having a one-on-one chat with Mrs. Finelli. And I was talking about things that I envision coming our way, supply chain problems, and kind of delineating some of what I saw. It was kind of not a pleasant discussion from, what the possibilities are that could happen to all of us. And we talked about electricity and how it's going to be impossible, literally impossible, for many people in the city to survive without electricity. For example, New York City, how would someone get out of the city if the electricity goes down? Of course, the traffic lights won't work, and it'll be absolutely chaos. Every man, woman, for him or herself, trying to get through intersections. Okay, when cars break down, who's going to move them out of the way? How do you refuel the vehicles from the few gas stations that are there? How do you buy food when no one knows the prices and no one trusts, another person? And where does water come from? 3 days, 3 minutes without air, 3
or
days without
imagine
water.
being in a high-story complex where you're living 16 floors up, and it's time to go to the bathroom.
Well, actually, that was one of the things that we talked about. Literally, because...
What are you going to do with all that biomass? That no place to flush, there's no water to clean it, and what are you going to do? Go down 16 flights and do it in the alley?
Well, here's what we talked about, and I mentioned that we have this little village where we live, and what they decided to do was have a town water system. So they have a water tower. And there were a couple houses, families that did not maintain their septic system. There's like 10 houses in downtown where we live. We live outside the town, of course, but maybe 10 houses, maybe even fewer than that. And a couple of them had problems with their septic system. So instead of the town residents saying, you know what, I know a guy with a backhoe, we'll just fix that. If you can't afford to fix it, we'll fix it for you. And no worries. We'll just do it for you. Instead of doing that, they got some money from the government, and they put in a municipal water treatment plant, which requires a person to operate it, and chemicals and so forth. So instead of the town fixing its own problem, they relied on the government, and they solved the problem in a big way. Well, here's what I was saying to Mrs. Finelli last night. So the grid goes down, and they've got a generator to pump water for a while. But they can't refuel the generator with the grid down. They can't bring the diesel or the propane to refill that tank. So figure 2 weeks at the absolute most. I'm really thinking more like a couple days. The generator will run out of fuel and water will stop being pumped. When the water stops being pumped, then the sewage treatment plant stops operating at that same second in time. When the electricity stops from the generators, that's it. No more sewage treatment. And then you've got
external chemicals brought in from some other place.
Right. So now the water treatment facility stops, and where is it? It's right ahead of a spring. Literally, they built this silly thing, I would say 500 feet to 1,000 feet away from the spring. Now, that water from the sewage is going to run downhill toward the spring, contaminate the spring. Now, this is just one micro example of what I envisioned happening.
This is your tax dollars and your politicians serving your best interests.
Correct. And all they had to do was spend, if they paid someone a few $1,000s to fix these septic systems. But no, it's not what they did. They spent like $1 million on this sewage treatment plant, which requires maintenance and chemicals. But this is all over the country. So when I see this and think about this, I think about the disease that will result from the electric grid going down. Rick, have I lost my mind, or is this the natural progression of things?
The whole thing is based on a house of straw and is going to collapse shortly. And all the different infrastructures are leaking. Your nuclear power plants are at the top of the list. And now they're poisoning us in the air we're breathing.
Okay. Radiation today. Let me just go down alphabetically. This is radiation above 1,000 counts per minute. So all of these cities...
And by the way, normal counts are 24 to 32. 45 is usually the highest you'll find in some of the larger cities.
Okay. So this is September 24th to October 8th.
Yeah, this will be where you're getting a triple dose.
Oh, worse than that. September 24th to October 8th, 2016. Now, this is in alphabetical order, so it'll take me about 2 minutes to do this. So I'm not going to give you the numbers, but because they're all above 1,000 counts per minute. Beta and gamma. Here we go. Anaheim, California, Atlanta, Georgia, Augusta, Georgia, Bakersfield, California, Billings, Montana, Boston, Massachusetts, Casper, Wyoming, Champaign, Illinois, Charleston, West Virginia, Cleveland, Ohio, Colorado Springs, Colorado, Denver, Colorado, Detroit, Michigan, Fresno, California, Grand Junction, Colorado, Harrisonburg, Virginia, Hartford, Connecticut, Idaho Falls, Idaho, Kearney, Nebraska, Laredo, Texas, Lexington, Kentucky, Lincoln, Nebraska, Little Rock, Arkansas, Louisville, Kentucky, Mason City, Iowa, Navajo Lake, New Mexico, New York City, New York, Pierre, South Dakota, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Portland, Maine, Raleigh, North Carolina, Rapid City, South Dakota, Riverside, California, Rochester, New York, San Diego, California, Shreveport, Louisiana, Spokane, Washington, Tucson, Arizona, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Worcester, Massachusetts. That is the list above 1,000 counts per minute beta and gamma radiation. Rick, is that serious, or is this something we don't need to worry about?
Well, your normal background count is 24. Not 100, okay. Not 1,000.
Yeah. Well, some of these are almost 2,000. Yeah. We'll be right back. Plus, I just want to let you know that, on Tuesday of this week, we ran a rebroadcast, and I got a number of calls. Are you okay? Are you okay? A number of our instructors were called the farmhouse and were concerned that Vinny wasn't on the air. And I just want to say what happened. Well, our high-speed digital connection was down, and I had the opportunity to find another path to GCN or run a rebroadcast, and it was difficult. So I decided to run a rebroadcast. So literally, we had technical difficulties. Now, I know that that's an excuse that's used a lot of times on the air, but we literally had a technical problem. So I wanted to share that with our class. Rick, History Channel. What's up with the History Channel and you? Do you have any updates for us?
Well, I went over to Medford and did a shoot. I don't know how it's going to play yet. Just stay tuned. I'm very excited because they have discovered caves at the bottom of the Grand Canyon that hold hieroglyphics, indicating that the Egyptians were in our Grand Canyon mining copper. And basically what they discovered there is like the Egyptian equivalent of the Smithsonian, with Buddha skulls and other things from previous epochs that the Egyptians were collecting. It's a tremendous find. Guess what? That particular section of the Grand Canyon is also closed off to the public because it's a national monument.
So how was this discovered if it was closed off?
Some guy was floating down the river in a raft, and he saw these caves about 1,000 feet up and pulled over and climbed and made the discovery back before the Grand Canyon was a national monument. That's when it all got closed off, and how the Smithsonian has somehow conveniently lost some artifacts that have history and discovery. The one I did a month previous was about that giant skull that was discovered in Pennsylvania in the 1800s, with archaeologists and pictures of it and all of that. And it has somehow disappeared into most likely the Atlantic Ocean. Why? Well, that one isn't a conspiracy so much as it was the two sons of a Methodist minister dogging Joseph, and the Mormons when he ripped off that congregation and moved to Utah with the Mormon Church. I don't know what's happening with our history books, but I can tell you that nothing that they're teaching in school is real. When I was in Antarctica and saw the Nazi base, the thing I also noticed was there was a Viking base from the 14th century, and that's nowhere in the history books. How does that work? The caves in Antarctica have been known for centuries, and yet there are plausible deniability, like you said, with aliens and not giving disclosure to the public. The thread of what the History Channel's primary thread is there has been a methodical attempt at covering up certain discoveries to mislead the world. And some of it has to do with aliens because of what it might do to religious beliefs. I don't know, because the problem is we're probably never going to know, because some individuals in certain positions have so disturbed the data as to cause a complete misunderstanding of what and who we are.
Rick, do you think you'll be able to visit those caves?
I probably won't in my lifetime. No, I think they're closed off to the public, and even anthropologists, archaeologists, whatever, I don't think they're going to allow people in there for whatever nefarious intent is on why they would do that. It's like finding some artifact that is obviously of technology not known to man. Does that mean it came from aliens? Not necessarily. The Germans were obsessed with previous technologies in different epochs that were quite different than our own. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
Rick, when we come back, let's talk about Mars. One-way trip to Mars. We'll be right back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. DocRam.com, DocRam.com. If you'd like to get that encyclopedia of agriculture, you can go to DocRam.com. And Rick, it's at Amazon starting today, you think?
We haven't put it on Amazon yet. That may or not happen today or tomorrow. Stay tuned.
Okay, very good. But you go to DocRam.com and
that Facebook will take you directly to my bookstore. Yeah. Uh-huh. My bookstore. Yeah.
Rick, I've been reading information about the...
By the way.
You're welcome. I've been reading information about the moon. And it seems like the moon is being pelted more frequently than we thought with objects. And, we can call them meteorites or maybe larger objects. And it's leaving these craters in the moon. And it has been for a long time. And we learned that way back in elementary school. So they say, scientists say, that the reason that the moon is pelted more than the Earth is because the moon doesn't have an atmosphere to burn up these projectiles that are flying around. Well, you were thinking about going to Mars, right? Now, Mars has pretty much...
NASA issued, for a couple of us, some free one-way tickets to Mars. But guess what? The problem is the recent research says that nobody can travel by normal spacecraft because by the time you got to Mars, you would be brain dead from radiation sickness. Mm-hmm. And that's the latest study. There's the rat studies that they did where they expose them to the same levels of exposure to gamma rays in space without protection. Nothing lives by the time it gets to Mars. In fact, just going into space and trying to go across the Van Allen belt and now what I'll call the Fukushima belt leaves most people sterile. And so astronauts going into space right out of the gate are being damaged right out of the gate. And they don't advertise or promote or discuss that very much, but there it is. Getting off planet is iffy, and travel in space is not possible yet with our current technologies. We might be able to get out there, but how one protects oneself from gamma rays and bursts from the sun and or other, space debris running around at high energy physics, we have no defense at this point. Putting things in the ground to store them wrapped in aluminum will work up to a certain point, and then it's going to backward when it's radiation.
So, Rick, if you were to go, okay, let's assume that
would
you're
I be president of Mars? I think that it's already colonized. I think that there is life forms on Mars, most likely humans. They sent a joint manned expedition to Mars in 1968. That's 1 year before the moon. I don't think they made it. I don't know what happened, but if they did it that long ago, you can well believe they have tried other attempts, and I'm guessing several were successful.
Well, how is it possible getting through the Van Allen radiation belt?
Well,
in cosmic rays?
You're probably not going to do any begatting. There won't be any children or anything like that. There might be sex, but there isn't going to be any pregnancies. Just going through the Van Allen belt is going to cause chromosome changes in the body. Serious. Now, whether it's lethal or not, it's marginal. That's how bad it is. And why the public hasn't been told that, it's just an FYI as a basic physics thing, going through that level of radiation as an ionized belt. Just going from Asia to LAX is exposure in high, the aircraft is like being in a microwave oven that is probably giving you the same exposure as 9 to 12 X-rays in a single flight. Imagine stewardesses and aircraft personnel that fly those rigs and what they're really like, and they don't know it. All you have to do is carry a Geiger counter. That'll tell you how bad it is. And that's what atmosphere does. It stops that or absorbs most of that radiation before it hits us here on Earth. The moon doesn't have such a shield. Neither does Mars. That means if you were going to be on Mars, you would most likely have to be underground, lined with cadmium. That is the Mars project, where they have a geodesic dome underground, that they can open up the top part of it for light, and they have it lined with cadmium for radiation shield.
So we're concerned about the space brain traveling from Earth outward, and we're
Yeah, the
concerned
recent,
about
I think I posted something less than 3 days ago on the study that was recently done showing that if you were able to get to Mars, your mind wouldn't even be working right. You'd be essentially brain dead.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that all seems reasonable to me based on, what I've learned about radiation.
Well, the physics of it, yeah, the basic fundamentals of, and we do not yet have a type of clothing or radiation shields. I noticed that people are marketing bullishly, how to protect yourself from, the microwave band and so on with these little charms that you wear around your neck or your ankle, and you have a grounding thing here and a hoop-de-doo there. It's all witchcraft.
Rick, I'm glad you mentioned this, and let me say this kind of carefully. Several years ago, I heard an advertisement, and I'm not going to say where, for a device that would shield your phone from, it was a fabric kind of a device that would shield your phone or protect you from microwave radiation coming out of your phone. So if you put this thing in your pocket, you were microwaving yourself slowly with your cell phone. Well, I called up the company, and I told them I would like to have one of those to look at, and I would send it back. And they sent me one, and I looked at it, and it did not work. It didn't work this way. So what I did was I put a cell phone, I had one at the time, and I put a cell phone in it and called it from another phone, and it rang. I'm thinking, wow. So how does this keep the microwave radiation inside this little pouch? So then I put the cell phone in a microwave oven unplugged, and called it, and it rang. And then I got a device from another company called Privacy Case, which is like a Prince Albert shaped cigar can, which is really, really precision manufactured, very, very well manufactured and engineered. And I put a cell phone in that, and it absolutely did not ring. So that works. But the fabric ones, the silver lined, silver infused, silver fabric at the time did not work. And I called the company up and I said, here's what I found out. And they pulled their commercials. They stopped running commercials about their particular product, and they went back to the engineers and the drawing board, and they re-engineered their case. Now, I'm not saying that I was the guy that caused them to do this. I'm saying that and it seems coincidental for sure, that I called them and said it doesn't work, and they pulled the commercials because they were advertising that on a broadcast medium that these things did work when actually they did not do everything they claimed. So, I'm a little frustrated that there are people who buy products based on claims, and I'm not talking about our advertisers. I'm talking about something I heard on the radio. There are people who go to conventions and they'll hear a speaker and they'll say, "Yep, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, I'll buy that and I'll be able to survive," and that may not be the case. So, just buying a bucket of food, class, seriously, buying a bucket of food and having 300 servings in that bucket, you believe that? I don't. I'm not talking about our advertisers. I'm talking about things I've heard as I've traveled. And how do you get 300 servings in a 5-gallon bucket of anything? Unless they're like that
was what FDA was originally all about, was to protect us with consumer services. And today, I can tell you personal experiences with FDA working with me up out of Portland. The Portland office is the one in Portland, Oregon, not Washington, D.C., is the one that determines whether or not a certain new drug is dangerous or not. Like ibogaine and iboga plant and that kind of thing. And they would contact people like me to get our best read on how they might want to proceed on these kinds of things. And the FDA, once I got into that level of dialogue with them, I began to realize that they're not there to protect the consumer. It's, again, all about money and special interest groups that are researching and turning in bogus reports. 1/4 of the medical reports coming out of China are fake, right out of the gate.
Just like
Nothing
the soil
that China
water
would say is real.
Just like soil and water conservation.
There are different medical studies to support a given herb for its use this way or that way. None of it's real. And 1/3 of it, I stopped carrying synephrine, as one of the imports that they were doing from the bitter orange. Synephrine is, listen, none of it's real. And it's time that everybody realizes that advertising is to promote the sale of commercial capitalism.
Oh, you're absolutely right. When we come back, Rick, let's talk about the end of the petroleum-powered car in 2035. Dr. Rams with us. Rick, I was thinking about this post I read. 2035 seems to be a date that is being pointed to as the end of the petroleum-powered car. So I've been thinking about that. Okay, so if 2035 is the end of the automobile as we know it, and owning your own automobile and traveling wherever you'd like to and from work or wherever you choose to travel, if that's going to be the end of that production of that kind of a vehicle in 2035, well, then we'd probably be phasing out as we approach 2035. And I was thinking about fuel. I was thinking about gasoline, and some people think, wow, these electric cars are great. But then if you think about the electric car and you think about, getting away from petroleum-based fuels, then you look at fractional distillation. And what happens, as I understand it, crude oil is separated into different fractions at temperatures by boiling the crude oil. So at the top, the lightest products like gasoline are at the top of this. Then kerosene's a little lower, and then diesel oil's a little lower, and then fuel oil, and then at the bottom of this distillation, what you're left with would be like tar and waxes and really heavy products. And so you could mix these tars with crushed stone, and wow, you can make roads. So the point I'm trying to make is that if we do away with petroleum chemicals like we have now as fuels, we will have less tar to make roads with. So this is a bigger problem.
We need to understand that batteries as storage devices are having to be handled separately, like air conditioners and other kinds of toxic chemicals at a waste dump. And that batteries in these new cars that NASA is predicting will happen in 2035 is going to have its own set of concerns and toxins. And that all of our technologies have never been around green. It's about how we get there quick so that we can make a bunch of money and move to the next thing.
Yeah, and one of our instructors and I have been working for days. He's an electrical engineer, and he and I have decided we're going to get the final solution for our batteries. We have I have a temporary solution, but I want to get to the final solution. So I'm looking at lead acid and the advantages and disadvantages. I'm looking at lithium ion, advantages and disadvantages, and
where
then
did you
nickel
get
ion.
the lithium? And, these are precious metals that have led to the rape of Africa.
That's exactly.
People seem to forget. That's why the Egyptians were most likely at the bottom of the Grand Canyon mining copper, because they didn't have it in Egypt.
That's a really good point.
A bigger picture here on why we do what we do.
So if we look at just the automobile, we used to have back in the 1950s and before that in the 60s, maybe even into the 70s, we had chrome bumpers, and chromium came from where? Africa, right? Well, where are those chrome bumpers? Well, all the chrome bumpers that I think we used to put on cars are probably destroyed. So we don't have chrome bumpers anymore.
What does destroyed mean? You mean put in one spot as a lump in the earth?
No, scattered all over. Over. Landfills. Some of the steel might have been reused, but where did that chromium go? And you're right, lithium is tough. It's not everywhere. So now we're looking at having these electric cars, and we're not really sure where we're going to get all the materials to make these electric cars.
What you're seeing now is a technology that the public isn't aware of called tomography, where they now know where everything is on Earth in terms of precious metals, diamonds, whatever. They know exactly where it is.
So we're just going to beat up those countries and go get it?
There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we've been doing that for years, right? Dr. Richard Allen Miller's been with us. Rick, thanks so much for spending your time today with us. And class, if you'd like to get his books on agriculture, the encyclopedia set, docram.com, DOCRAM.com. And I'm going to get my set. I am. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.